The bent over barbell row is a great compound exercise to build overall back strength and power within the muscles of the posterior chain, which aim to increase strength and stability in the lower and upper back and even the hamstrings and core. Bent over rows improve your posture and spine stability, which reduces the risk of lower back injuries. This exercise is an effective strength exercise for developing core stability, shoulder stability through working the shoulder joint through a full range of motion from protraction to retraction. And this is excellent for overall strength and power development for athletes as the hamstrings, glutes, and major muscles in the back are worked. Rone 2017 indicate how bent over rows can train different movement patterns depending on the angle of the exercise. This exercise is very beneficial for athletes in the aspects of building strong neuromuscular movement patterns and training different planes of movement, which ensures that the athlete's muscles are strong and functional instead of being really strong in major muscle areas and weak in other supplementary areas, which could lead to injuries in the future and problems with posture and spinal stability. The muscles used in a bent over row are the latissimus dorsi, the rhomboids, the major and upper middle trapezius. So that's all muscles that comprise in the back. And you have the posterior deltoid, the teres major, the infraspinatus, the supraspinatus, and the subscapularis, which are all parts of the shoulder. And you have the biceps brachii and the brachialis, which are part of the arms. And you also have the rectus femoris and the hamstrings, which are in the hips, the hamstring muscle and the glutes, which also stabilize it from the hip when you are bending from the hip. In the bent over row, you really want to squeeze your shoulder blades together, and depending on if you want to increase muscle mass for hypertrophy, you can really use this exercise for time under tension and really squeeze at the end point of retraction to get as much tension on the lats and trapezius as you can. Or if you're just doing it for power development, really just protract and retract as quickly as possible to really get that velocity in the movement and the speed through the movement, which will still be beneficial and really engage a lot of motor neurons in the movement. The more motor neurons an athlete is able to engage through any movement or exercise, the more powerful they are through that movement. So this is very beneficial for this exercise can be utilized in many different ways depending on an athlete's goal. So now I'm going to perform the bent over row and demonstrate it for Connor. So the critical element of the technique is to maintain a nice rigid torso. We want to keep our head neutral with our spine, so so you could be able to have a nice straight line from in between my head and shoulders. Here I'm just demonstrating the bend at the hips and my feet position. So we want our knees slightly flexed throughout the lift, just to ensure that there's not too much tension on the hamstring. So we have feet shoulder width, just pointing out a little bit. Underhand or overhand grip doesn't really matter. Whatever you have more bicep recruitment through an underhand supinated grip. So I just prefer it because it feels more natural to me. I have my knees flexed. My torso is nice and rigid with my head neutral with my spine, so I have a nice straight line. I'm really thinking about the protraction and retraction of my shoulders, so they're protracted there, I retract and then I pull and try to squeeze at the top. Really working that shoulder joint for a full range of motion. I don't really, I keep my head nice and neutral to the ground, so I want my head neutral, my eyes looking down. I don't really want to look up in the mirror and see how I'm doing with the exercise, because it puts an extra strain on my, puts a really big strain on my neck, and that can really lead to injuries, which we don't want. So Connor is going to demonstrate. is going to perform the bent over row. I'm just going to show him how to the best cues for it. So I'm really telling him bend at the knees, and you want to bend at the hips just at a 45-degree angle. keeping your head nice and neutral with your spine. So you want to maintain a nice rigid and nice, good. The tighter your core is, the more rigid your torso and back will be, which is what you want. So he's looking down at the ground. His head is looking. His eyes are towards the ground. Really, I'm just cueing him on his protraction and retraction of the scapula, and really squeezing his shoulder blades together. He's got a controlled pull towards the abdomen, so it's pretty similar on the eccentric and the concentric portions of the lift. So really just working more of time under tension. So you could extend this movement if you wanted to extend the eccentric portion of the lift, but it's not really necessary. It's more, I think the lift's more important on the concentric. So really on the shortening of the, you want to really shorten those lats and trapezius at the top of the movement and get that squeeze. Elbows are always, your elbows are very close to the ribs, so they're tracking the ribs. Keeping the movement nice and smooth. We're not jerking our back up or jerking our torso. Everything's locked in. Our knees are slightly flexed. Our hips are